when I started writing for work, when I started writing for money, that's what led me to marketing.
What are those three cards that are really, by the way, I am not AI. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Marketing Tarot, the podcast where we basically explore into the strategy of people living right now, especially marketers. And I'm your host, Charu. And I'm very excited to speak and to deep dive into the body of work of somebody who's with us today, Vitika Sharma Banerjee. Welcome, Vitika. How are you?
Hi, Charu. Thank you. Thank you for having me over.
No, thank you so much for accepting my invite. I really appreciate the time. And we are just going to have a very casual chat. You know, this is portal for our marketing folks to get into the brains of some of the very, I would say, people who have a very strong body of work and just pick their brains a little bit. So welcome again. And I guess the first thing, obviously, which is always a very intriguing question for me to know is how did you get into marketing? What's your journey been like? Once you talk about that, what were the some of the moments or the shifts in that journey that kind of made you land where you are today and shaped your entire marketing career?
Well, if you want me to go right from the beginning, then I had planned to be in medicine, and
Wow.
I realized I therefore chose science subjects in 11th and 12th. I think by the end of 11th, I realized I'm not cut out to be a doctor. How much ever I might have prided myself in,
Right.
being good at subjects. But I realized, I think, thankfully for myself, very early in my academic career, that that was not my cup of tea. But
Mhm.
I've always been good at, writing, and always been good at sort of reading, was
Okay.
always a voracious reader. So I thought, maybe journalism. So I started writing in school. I started writing in college. I used to write a freelance column in one of the business papers even while I was in college. And that was something that I thought that's where my destiny was. But when I started writing for work, when I started writing for money, I somehow felt that I can be creative as long as I don't have a gun on my head. So, if somebody asks me to write for money to a deadline, it's something that really sort of psychs me out. I did realize even at that time that what excites me is the newness of creation, the creating something new, talking to people, finding out, going beyond what they say, and digging deep into their
Of course.
motivations. So advertising and marketing was something that I came to by going through a couple of other destination points.
I see.
And I think advertising was a very close competitor, but
Mhm.
I decided to go in for my MBA after my graduation in English honors, and that's what led me to marketing. Because when I studied the subject, I realized, this is something that is very exciting for me. It's not, it doesn't seem like it's work.
Yeah.
It's understanding motivations, understanding their insights, trying to extract what's meaningful, to then translate that into, today I know what to call it, but
Yeah.
translate it into a brand proposition, and then
Of
create a
course.
whole, live, actual, tangible, look, touch, feel product.
Mhm.
uh, that was something that I think I realized very early in my career. um, at the same time, I must say that I am happy that, I think somewhere along the way there was a guiding light that sort of kept sort of guiding me through my career. um, I was very clear I wanted to do sales before I got into marketing. So I spent about
Interesting.
almost 3 years, 3.5, 4 years in sales, hardcore FMCG, on the ground sales before I came into marketing. And I'm talking this about, way back in 96 to 97, 90, 99,
Mhm.
where there were very few women in FMCG sales. So, really very blessed to have mentors through my journey who pushed me to do more than what I thought I was capable of. That's how I am where I am.
That's awesome because again, I think that the time you're talking in, it was, I think marketing was, it's still, I wouldn't say a very like a first choice career. I would say we are getting there. We're almost there where marketing is amongst the top 5 or top 10 careers that one goes for and directly chooses right after college. It's on the list. But back then it was really someone either stumbling upon this, suddenly, or just being referred to a marketing team by just being in a company, for example, you getting into sales and then just by chance getting into marketing and doing really well there. But I love the trajectory of your career. It must be a little challenging, you being from a female point of view. How was it?
It was definitely more challenging than what it is today. I mean, consider the fact that I was posted I was not sent to any rural posting, for example. Although being the rebel that I was and still am, I would have loved to be posted in the rural. But even in a large city like Bangalore, the sales office did not have a women's loo, for example.
There you go.
So I used to use my boss's cabin exclusive toilet. As part of the sales stint, you had to sort of, obviously you were in the warehouses, you were going to distribution points. It was not easy. I mean, I have at that time traveled along with a ready stock unit. Ready stock unit is those auto rickshaws that deliver stocks. They don't have passenger seats. They have only the Tata 407s that
it's completely open. Yeah.
So there are those mini trucks as well as there are auto rickshaws that move around in the marketplaces to deliver stocks from from shop to shop. And I have ridden with the driver because you have to be in the market. You're going and meeting the retailers. And at that time, all those inhibitions that we grow up as women, you're not. I mean, you haven't really. A typical upper middle class upbringing will, of course, you've grown up in an environment which is very protected. You've not been out with men, all over in the entire room. The only woman being you being the only woman, it has never happened. And that was the norm when I went into sales, because I was the only woman in the entire company who was in the sales at that time. And working with them, it takes time for men to realize that you're here for good. So initially it used to be that, मैडम शायद कुछ प्रोजेक्ट करने आए हैं,
temporary.
So she's come for a project, let her finish the project and go, and things will be back to normal again. It took them some time that look guys, I'm going to be here, so deal with it. But I think, to be fair, it also depends a lot on the other person. I mean, if you take yourself seriously and if you make sure that people understand that your gender has nothing to do with your work, it's not the primary reason or motivation for you to work or not work. The gender comes in the first 2 minutes, not even 5 minutes. And then once they realize that you're an area sales manager and you're an area sales manager, it doesn't matter that you're a woman, happen to be a woman, but you're going to be as tough and you're going to be as non-negotiable as any manager should be in terms of dealing with commercials, in dealing with targets, leading your team to excel, all of that.
That's great because I think those were the years when we were kind of laying the foundation of being normal, right? In spite of your gender, like just your work speaks, and just getting over that initial hurdle. I think those were the years. I think now it's we are in a much better world. I have to say.
I would say that, but Charu, as you may have seen from my profile also, I do a lot of pro bono work for women's leadership roles, and I feel very disheartened to see that actually the systems or the ecosystems have not really changed much. So there are the same problems that women are facing today in terms of attitudes, in terms of bias, in terms of how they need to still fight through, whereas it should be normalized. There are many, many more women in what you call roles which are not traditionally seen to be women's roles. And yet today, they're facing the same problems I faced 30 years ago. And that sometimes very disheartening for
Yes,
me.
it is. It is. No, I agree. I agree. It's definitely not a perfect world, but maybe it's a little better than what it was.
Definitely,
Um,
definitely.
and uh, and I'd love to know more about what are you currently doing, Vitika? I'm familiar with the Future Fit, but just for our viewers, where are you and what are you handling right now?
So, after almost 3 decades in the corporate world, I started my own consulting firm. I am a strategic marketing consultant. I support big and small businesses, startups to launch their new businesses, launch their
Right.
new brands. Feel very proud that in my journey of 12 years as a consultant, in addition to what I did in my active corporate life, I have, been instrumental or really supported, now in 12 years, almost five more brands in the
Mhm.
market. So, it fills me with great pride and great joy to look back. One of the brands that I supported was recently launched last fortnight on
Mhm.
the 13th of February. It's a brand in the luxury skincare space. I'm wishing them all the best.
Absolutely.
And in addition to that, I also have a venture of my own, creating my own brand in the area of children's fitness. It's
Yes.
called Future Fit Gymnastics. And we are perhaps today the largest chain of gymnastics training centers for children in India today. So we are across Delhi, Gurgaon, Noida, Faridabad, as well as Calcutta. We partner with all the good schools in these cities to tutor children in gymnastics, introduce them to a very basic form of fitness through gymnastics, and we also do competitive training for
Right.
children who compete. That I run with a partner of mine who's based here in Gurgaon, and my consulting is a proprietary firm that I actually run on my own.
That's awesome.
In addition to that, I'm also enrolled for a doctoral program, which
Oh,
I'm
wow.
really persevering. And that is my sort of, I would say, my effort at keeping myself updated and upgraded in terms of skills. I'm doing a doctoral program in emerging technologies and generative AI. I think that's the future of marketing.
Absolutely.
So I'm making sure that I'm sort of updated with what's happening in the marketing world and can lead it from the front rather than trying to catch up.
Very interesting. No, I think that is something that all the marketers should do. And this whole, I would say, scare of, marketing being completely wiped off from the surface of this earth in terms of manual marketing, human marketers. I think just reading a little bit more about what this AI revolution is, what it's bringing to marketing, I think that scare just automatically goes away. It's just a different way to look at things rather than just replacing you. So I think that's something I would encourage everybody to read a little bit about. You don't have to go much deeper, but at least even if you read surface level, I think it answers a lot of questions. With that being said, I want to get into a little bit of an interactive section of the podcast, and I'm going to just take you to this portal, the Marketing Tarot that I have built. And it just has a set of 22 cards, Vitika, and they are basically I would say, the basic pillars of marketing. And I'm just going to share that with you and just get a perspective of any one of the random cards that we pick from the deck and see how you apply that in your strategy and with your clients. So are we ready?
Yep, sure.
Okay. Perfect. It looks a little bit intimidating, but what it is really talking about marketing in a fun way, because I think marketing is not just, following the data, and sometimes it also challenges the concept of logic, right? So there's a little bit of a human element there, a little bit of intuitiveness, and the fear of unknown. Even if you do everything right, you don't know what the output is going to be. So that's why this concept has come into the picture. And we have 22 cards. Do you have a preference, from left to right? If
I
anything
will
you...
I will leave you to pick for me.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay.
not good at cards.
Okay, perfect. So I think I'll stop here and let's see what this reveals. All right.
Okay.
The card that's come up is the vision. And just to help the three terms that maybe are going with this card is obviously clarity, direction, and the horizon, how you started from, and what is your ultimate vision, ultimate aim. So, what do you think about this card, Vitika? And what
It's
importance do you give
I
to the
think
vision?
you're a very good tarot reader, Charu. I think, I, for one, whenever I start an assignment, a consulting strategy assignment, the first thing I actually do is ask the brand owner or the promoter or the entrepreneur that I'm working with to articulate their vision. And, it's a completely, how I would put it is, I have no judgment on the vision. The vision is the promoters, the entrepreneurs' vision, and
Right.
as their business and marketing consultant, my job is to help them get to the vision. So it's very important to actually. This is the first. It happens to be the first card, and it is also the first thing that I do when I take up an assignment. Is actually articulate the vision, get the promoter to articulate a vision, and then work the way around putting down milestones as to how we'll reach them, what are the things we need to do, what's the kind of budgets we need to put towards it, what are the activities, and what are the stepping stones that will lead us to where you want to be.
Right.
Very important, extremely important card, and the first card suitably.
No, that's great. And I have also, in my discussions, Vitika, with my clients, I see that a lot of times, I would say almost close to 50% of the time, there is a little bit of a hesitation, and that sometimes while talking about the vision, the owner or the key person, they get a kind of an epiphany. Maybe this is not exactly what I am working towards, and that clarity comes while they are talking about their vision. So a
Absolutely.
lot of times I have experienced that. So I think you're right. Vision is a very, very important card, and maybe the first card.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you for that. While we are here on the portal, I think a very interesting exercise here will be for me to get your insights on maybe your best hand of cards. So basically, 3 cards that you always keep in mind when you are preparing a campaign or a strategy. What are those 3 cards that are really, really important to you? And I can scroll up.
Okay. Yeah, let's just scroll down to see what all the cards are. And then, I think I have in my mind what I want to say. I think the first card that I would like to pick is Insight. The Insight is really a starting point. And when I say insight, it's not just an insight into the business or the promoter or the entrepreneur. It's the insight or the reason why.
Right.
That's a very important card for me. The second one that I would pull together is data. Today, we are fortunate that technology allows us, to surround ourselves with data of whatever kind we need. I mean, if you want market data, you want consumer data, you want data on formulations, ingredients, what are the claims, what is happening in the rest of the world, what is the forecast, what are the trends. There is amazing amount of data, and data really use very, very effectively if you want to build your story, right? The third, I like the cards the way you've put it. I would have said the competitive edge, but I think I like the card, the disruption. So once you have the insight and then you have the data to build your plan, what is the disruption that you're bringing to the market? How are you going to be different? Why will people sit up and take notice? What is the disruption that you bring that will get the share of wallet to shift from your competitor to you? I like the word disruption also because it has a bit of a aggression built into it. I mean, coming from literature, there are some words that speak out to me. They have a feeling. And disruption is a very disruptive word. So I like it.
Yeah. It's really going against the norm, trying something different, right? Like what new can you bring to the table? And also, I think the underlying question, Vitika, would be here is, does these three cards apply to someone starting a company, like for a startup, or also for existing companies who already have a brand in the market? Like, do these also apply to that?
They will apply to anything new that you want to create and establish in the marketing world. If it's a new brand, it will apply there. If it's a new communication campaign, it will apply there. Let me give you an example. Supposing it's a new brand that you want to bring in this area of, say, luxury soaps. You need to have understood why. Why should you? What is the problem that you're going to solve with another luxury soap? What is that problem that you are solving, right? The Dove solved a very, very clear problem. It solved the problem of drying skin through soap. When before Dove came in, all soaps had very high sort of detergency and
Chemical, yeah.
and they would dry the skin. So
Yeah.
Dove came and disrupted the market by saying, I am not a soap, I am 1/4 moisturizing free. And they had the data to actually come and do a complete U-turn on the market. They had
course.
data from consumers, they had data from the market to say it's a large enough market, and yet there is this huge discontent around using soaps. And therefore they came and disrupted the market with a completely different formulation. Now that goes well with, that could have been a small company, that could have been a large company. It happened to be Unilever, and therefore they had the monies to put behind that idea and make it work.
Yeah.
But if you look at even someone like Mamaearth, for example,
Yep.
when Mamaearth came into the market, what is the disruption that they did? They said that all the products that are available, there is, and except for Johnson & Johnson, which is already going through a lot of backlash of bad formulations and
Right.
some substances that they were using, banned substances and all that. Mamaearth came up and said, so many products for all of us to use and nothing for my little child, my newborn baby. I'm, as a new mother, Ghazal was, the voice of the brand, and
Yes.
she came and said, I'm bringing something that's safe for me and that's safe for my baby. So there was a reason, there was a problem they were solving. That was the insight. They had enough
Absolutely.
data with them to understand that customers were struggling and were always in a dilemma as to what to use for their little children. And they came and disrupted the market by bringing a brand that was targeted at young mothers and young children, and that's how even the brand name came in as Mamaearth. The same applies to if you were to launch any advertising campaign as well. If you look at the logic, it's the same. You have to understand the reason why, which brings you the insight. You gather all the data that validates your assumption of the insight, gives you enough confidence as to what is the disruption that you're going to bring, how big is the impact that you can make. And disruption is what you will, it's going against the grain
Yes.
and try to address the problem.
Yeah.
That's where your disruption will. And if it's a strong enough disruption, you will have people sitting up and taking notice, people wanting to switch brands, people wanting to switch teas. All of that will happen if it's a disruptive idea.
Yeah, I mean, in this world, it's really something that stands out is what catches the eye, right? So, in very simple terms, so you have
And
to have some
also,
differentiation.
Also,
Yeah.
I want to put on the table that all of us keep thinking, we need an innovation. We need an innovation. Innovation is not something new to the world always. Well, if you're lucky, if it's a new technology, definitely you can bring something new to the, and you'll be lucky to be once in a lifetime. But you do need innovation to make a disruption, and that innovation is really could be in process. Innovation could idea. Innovation could be in the thinking and the approach with which you bring that disruption. So don't, as marketers, I always say innovation, or rather creativity, is not something out of this world. It is it's a new mix. Creativity is a mix. It's a new mix. It's like, if we used to have, that was called toy, which we used to have, where with the broken glasses. I'm
Like
forgetting.
a cube, like a building block kind of a thing.
No, so you had that thing that looked like a binocular where it had broken glasses inside, and every time you turned it, there was a new pattern that emerged.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is the elements are the same. What you have with you is the same, but how you mix it together to come
Arrange it.
to a new idea or a new disruptive idea is what is creativity and innovation.
Yeah. No, I completely am with you. And that's what I'm also trying to bring here. the regular boring marketing talks. I'm trying to make it a little bit more interesting and interactive for someone who is also not into marketing, right? To just see how interesting this field is. So thank you for sharing that, Ritika. That was very, very interesting. And then we'll get back to our discussion. And this is really the last segment of a couple of questions that I want to ask you. So our previous guest, and I want to keep this going because it really keeps the conversation alive. She had a very interesting question to ask our next guest, and she wanted to know, with all these AI tools that are available in the market, how do you really choose the right tool for a particular marketing strategy? Like, is there a process, or you just test and try and whatever works, whatever sticks? You have any insights into that?
So I can share my experience. I think so much is changing in AI today, and it's changing every day, believe me. Even the tools, the LLMs, their algorithms, they're changing by the day. So it's very difficult to actually say, this thing will work and this won't, because by the time I say it and by the time you use it, maybe two different things. What I do is I read up a lot. So I read up a lot. There's lots on LinkedIn. There's lots on the blogs about which are the tools that are doing well and what each tool can do well and what it can't. So there are different aspects. So for example, ChatGPT is great if you want it to think creatively. But if you want it to execute what you have given as input, then it's not great, because there's a significant amount of hallucination that happens through ChatGPT. So if you want, for example, if you want ChatGPT to write a poem for your mom on her 80th birthday, from a emotional poem from a daughter, beautiful, excellent results. But if you give the tool, say a brief on a brand and ask them to write, or create a back of pack panel for packaging, you have to be very wary, because they will hallucinate it. It'll hallucinate the design, because it is built as a creative model.
Yeah.
For that, you need to go to a separate model. Execution models are separate. LinkedIn has a lot of information, so I do that, and I also try hit and try. Is something that really works for me.
I agree, because every day we get a new tool and there's something new, and one cannot keep up, right? So we just choose one, test it, and then see if it's really working for you.
And there are different segments and different tools for each segment. So you need to figure out what works best for you. Minimum common denominator.
Absolutely.
And really work with that.
Oh, thank you for that. And do you have something that you would want to get a different opinion on, or maybe something that you would want our next guest to comment upon or throw their views on?
Yes, there's something that's been really amusing me in the recent past, and something I would like more marketing minds to tell me what they think. You know that today most of the content you see on Insta, whether it's static or whether it is video content, is AI generated. Okay, branded content is AI generated, including UGC videos, which look like consumers. They are not. They are AI driven, AI created models who are speaking to you as talking heads, right? I would like to understand what other marketers are thinking about, how impactful, engaging, and persuasive is this kind of communication? Is it as good as real people talking to you? Or do you think there is an element of indifference that comes in, or, there is something that's not touching your heart, that doesn't go beyond persuading to try?
So basically, like these generated personalities, right? By the way, I'm not AI generated. I'm a real human.
So good to know, Charu. So good to know. I doubt an AI generated person could have such a beautiful laugh.
Thank you. But you're right. Sometimes you get fooled, although we are online for 24/7, but still sometimes I get fooled. And the finesse is, according to me, the finesse sometimes is really good, right? And you do strike a human connection. But I would say 90% of the time for me, one can really recognize that this is not a real human, and then maybe like for me, I think that cuts it off, right, especially when you're talking and when you're doing an interactive. But let's see what our next guest says. I don't want to completely alter their views, but interesting, very interesting question, Vitika. Thank you for that.
Good to know more about this.
Yeah. So here we are, end of our session. Anything you have to say?
Oh, it's been a pleasure. So wonderful talking. I didn't realize it's already ending now.
Yeah, we are a little bit over our time, but again, really appreciate your time. I know you are absolutely busy and occupied, but I hope our viewers, get to see, and hear some of your insights and apply that in their day-to-day work. So thank you again. Really appreciate, and have a great day.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Bye.
Bye.